Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the English with Kirsty podcast. This is episode 208, and if anyone was listening last time, my voice is back to normal now. It's as it should be, so thank you if you persevered with the episode last time, but I thought it was a really good conversation and I wanted to deliver it to you on the podcast. So today I have a solo episode for you because the plan is to alternate them, to have something that I'm telling you about, some tips, some information one week, and then next time to have a guest on the podcast as well, because I think it's good. I've got things that I want to share with you, but there are also times when I want to bring other people's stories and tips and information so that we can all learn from them as well, because the podcast is here for other people to learn, but I really enjoy learning from my guests too, and that happened this morning. I recorded the next episode after this one this morning, and I definitely learned some things as well, so that's really good. So today I was thinking about something I heard last week, and it was how somebody was saying that you should focus on your message and not how you feel about delivering that message, and I thought that was a really interesting concept, and I wanted to look into it in a bit more detail today, because that doesn't mean that the message is the only important thing, because I've been to meetings before. I think I've shared this before. I had to present my company in Romanian, and I had a good text, but I didn't deliver it very well because it was the first time that I'd done it, and I was really, really nervous. So, the message itself is incomplete without somebody who's going to deliver it well. But sometimes if you're thinking about the message, it can help you to put less focus and less attention on your feelings, especially if you're feeling a bit nervous because you're speaking in front of a group of people, or you're, going to a job interview or something like that. So focusing on the message and what you want to communicate can help you, because that's factual and you're taking some of the emotion away from it. And I don't believe that if we ignore our emotions, they go away. I think that's a really unhelpful way to think, because there are times when we're nervous, and that's normal, it's going to happen. But sometimes if you try and focus your attention on something else, it can help you to regulate those emotions, which may sabotage your presentation if you let them take over. So there are 5 things that we can look at, and I'm just going to go through them quickly so that we can talk about them in a bit more detail. Because I remember there was a time when I was working with another business owner, and we were doing an interview in Romanian, and all I felt at the beginning of that was like, oh no, what if I say something wrong? What if I mispronounce something? But then I thought, actually, no, we're talking about something that's going to be useful for other people, that they can learn from, and that should be my focus, what people will get from this, because that was the whole point we were doing it, because it was going to help people, that it was useful. So, number 1 is make it clear. And this is obvious. Everybody needs to communicate clearly, otherwise, you don't communicate. But there are different ways of looking at this. What is clarity? So it's making it easy for people to understand what you want to communicate, whether that's the answer to a question. If you're in a meeting and somebody's asked a question, don't give them your whole life story before you answer the question. Or don't answer another 3 questions and give them some background information and explain how you got there. If all they need is the answer to the question, then give them that. If they want extra information, they can ask you. But make it easy for people to get the information that they need from you. The same with if you're introducing yourself. I've been to meetings, for example, with business owners, and I've done it myself as well. I'm not going to say that I always got this right, because I didn't. A couple of years ago, I got it wrong too. But I tried to fit everything I do into this 90-second pitch, which is impossible because I'm involved in lots of different projects. I'm primarily an English teacher, but I do other things. But I try to fit it all in, and that just confuses people. So if you're introducing yourself, focus on the one thing that you think is relevant to that audience or that person, or just choose one thing if you don't know what that is, but don't try to fit so many things into a quick introduction that nobody will remember what you do because it was too chaotic. Focus on the details. If it's something longer, if it's something that you're, I don't know, presenting if you're giving a presentation on something, you take the time to make sure that it is easy for people to understand who haven't seen it before, because your notes will generally make sense to you because you wrote them. But if you're writing something, make sure that read it aloud, because then you can hear whether something sounds strange or not. It's easier to pick up then. Or if it's something important, get somebody else to look at it, whether it's something that you wrote in your first language or another language. Sometimes other people see the things that you don't, because you're so close to the text or so close to the project or the idea. I know one of my things is formatting. I hate formatting and I'm not particularly good at it, so I usually get someone else to check something if it's important, because I know that language is my thing, formatting isn't. And especially if it's another language, I do that. I ask for help when I need it. So to make things clear, sometimes you do need to ask for a bit of help. Not every time, but if it's something that's more important, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. So that's make it clear, number 2. But also make it comprehensive, because sometimes, especially working with people who are using a different language or an additional language, sometimes people don't say all that they could say. And I understand that, because sometimes you don't have all the vocabulary to give as clear an answer or as detailed an answer as you would in your first language. I've certainly done it. I was in a meeting and we were supposed to be talking about our marketing and communication strategy for growing the business. And it was in Romanian, and it was last year, and I could do that in English. I attempted it in Romanian, but I know the English version would have been better. So sometimes, you have to work with what you have, and it's normal that in your first language you would say more than you would in an additional language if you're still learning that additional language. But I've seen it happen in situations where people are using their first language too. I was helping someone to prepare for a job interview when I still had colleagues, and I knew that this colleague that I was working with was probably the best candidate that they were going to have for this job interview. But when I asked her the questions, she was so modest. She didn't refer to all the experience that she had, or if she didn't make it clear that she was the driving force behind some of those things that happened. So I think it's not just something that we do in another language. Sometimes we don't give all the information that we have out of a sense of modesty, and especially in a job interview, that's not good. You really do need to show what you can do, because the people in the interview don't know you, maybe, or even if they do, they have to make their decision based on the information that you gave them. And the same goes for meetings. If you're contributing to a meeting in English, people don't know what you know unless they know you really, really well, but even then they might not. So don't give a shorter answer just so you can be done with speaking faster if there's more that you could contribute and more that you can say that would help the other people in the meeting. So number 3, make it relevant. This is the same as making it clear in terms of not talking about a load of stuff that nobody really cares about, that doesn't add value, but it's more than that. It's thinking about really knowing your audience. If you have a message to share, what level of knowledge does that audience have? It can be difficult if there's a mixture, because you need to make it relevant for the people who are experts on the subject and also the people that maybe don't have as much knowledge. That's harder, but if you have a group and they're all about the same level, then that can be easier. But at least find out who they are, who's likely to be there. And it's also possible that you'll have to change your message if it becomes apparent that you've got this wrong, or that you didn't have the right information about the level of knowledge. Then you may need to change as you're going along, and that's hard too, but it's worth doing, because then you're personalising the experience and the message for the people who are listening. So sometimes in business, a standard template will work. If somebody signs up for the newsletter, you don't need a massive amount of personalisation there, because you perhaps don't know why they signed up or what they're going to be interested in, and until you can get to know your audience a bit better. But in conversations, standard templates generally don't work. So always thinking about how you can listen to the people with whom you're communicating to find out what they really need from you, to find out what will be relevant for them so that you can personalize your message to make it relevant. Number 4, make it yours, because I don't know, you can't present someone else's notes. That doesn't work, because it's their voice, their words, their way of presenting. If you're going to do that, you may as well just give the notes to the people that you're presenting to. And the same with in a meeting, you may have to give an update on someone else's behalf, but if it's something that's important to you, something that's relevant to your business, or if it's about you, it really needs to be done in your voice, which isn't just your physical voice, it's the way you communicate, the words you use, the way your personality comes across as you deliver the message. And that's especially important in additional languages too, because sometimes I think we all have a bit of a different personality in our different languages. I think that's normal. We can express parts of our personality better in some languages, and that's not always our first language. I think that's fun to explore the different facets of our personality as we use other languages. But sometimes the way we feel about communicating in another language in a big group, for example, can change our personality a bit, or it makes us hide parts of our personality, and then it makes it harder for people to get to know us. So this part about make it yours is use your voice, use the way you would express yourself, and that takes some time sometimes to learn to do that in other languages, but it's definitely worth doing it, because that means that it will be easier for people to get to know you. And to do number 5 on the list, which is make it memorable for the right reasons, not because you did something, I don't know, that everyone's talking about for the next week, but make it memorable for the right reasons, that you helped somebody, that you gave people the answer to the question, that you showed them how the solution you have will help them, that you used a story, like an interesting story, to deliver a message or to show them something, because people relate to people. Sometimes it's not appropriate to tell a story, like if you're in a meeting and everyone's in a hurry, but sometimes if it's a learning point, then a story can really help, because it's something that people can relate to. Or maybe you just explain something in a better way than the other people had heard before, because I've had that. I was studying for something on a course, and what they wrote in the book just didn't make sense, and I googled, found some other information. It's like, I just don't get this. And I asked somebody that worked in that field. They gave me an answer. It's like, well, yeah, I do understand this. It's not actually as difficult as I thought it was. It just hadn't been explained in a way that made sense to me. And so if you can do that for people, if you can clarify things and make it easy for them to understand, then they will remember that because you helped them. Or maybe it's memorable because you had a great new idea that you were able to explain and get people enthused about the idea. Maybe it's because you were able to summarize a discussion, and everybody kept going around in circles, but you were able to bring people back and to summarize and help them to move on. It can be lots of different things, but if you're remembered for adding something to a meeting, for contributing something, that's what you'll be remembered by. And if you don't say anything, then they may not even remember that, because the person who didn't say anything. I know it's hard sometimes, but sometimes you really have to push yourself forward, especially if it's in another language, because people aren't usually watching for, was there a mistake? They're interested in what you have to say. And I know some people who are using other languages don't think, is there a mistake? I work a lot with, beginners and intermediate learners, but I know that a lot of people who listen to this podcast are not beginners, and it's completely normal for them to use additional languages at work. It's what they do every day. But I think there can be other reasons why we hold back a bit. It may not be language related. It might just be our personality. We don't want to seem like the person who's always got something, I don't know, who always sees the problems, for example. I know someone like that, and it's like, I always see the problems, but I always see the solutions as well. So it's actually a positive thing that they can see what might go wrong. And if you're prepared for the things that go wrong, you're actually in a better position. But I think sometimes this person doesn't share because they think, oh, people will just think that I'm being negative again. So there are lots of reasons why we can hold back. It can be our personality. It can be, you might be in a team with some people who talk way too much, and then it's hard to find your time to speak. There are lots of reasons, but it's important to be memorable because, that's how you build relationships. If you're memorable for the right reasons, if you're clear, if you're relevant, if you give people what you need, if you're authentic, and if you're memorable for the right reasons, that will really help with your communication. And also if you can focus on the message and giving people what they need. If you do have any anxiety or, if you're feeling a bit stressed about delivering something, that can help you too because you're focusing on the outcome and the results. So that it's taken a bit longer to expand on this idea, which was a one-sentence idea that I heard last week, but I think it's worth doing because language isn't just about learning other languages. It's about, I'm an English teacher, but I'm also interested in communication and helping people, whether English is their first language or not, to communicate more effectively. Because prior to working in teaching, I was a communications manager, so that's my background. And I think we can all learn to communicate better. We can all keep learning and keep improving so that we are better able to communicate with others. So that's what I wanted to share today. Have a great week and have fun learning English. And if you want to have a look at the show notes page, it's englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 208, because this is episode 208. And if you want to improve your communication skills by talking with us, then don't forget that we have the Conversation Club, which is once a month. And there are two groups. One is for general English, one is for business owners. So if you're interested in that, then go to the show notes page and you'll find the link to the Conversation Club as well. Okay, have a great week and have fun learning English or improving your English.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.